In terms of the approach to the Prem Rugby Cup this week, how do you and Alex Anderson, obviously in conjunction, approach team selection? Because there's obviously Premiership coming into the tail end of the season, Business End chasing top four. There's obviously the Champions Cup as well coming up at the start of next month. So how do you balance resting players, rotating players, giving young players a chance, but still kind of maintaining rhythm? How do you approach that in terms of team selection?
Yeah, so we've spoken. Obviously, there's lads that need a rest that have played a lot of games. So part of it is well-being, looking after them. But we've spoken about this week and framing it as an opportunity for lads that haven't necessarily had it just yet, especially in a Sharks shirt. We've got a few lads that go out and get their rugby elsewhere, some loan clubs. So they'll get an opportunity this week to come back in. There'll be some lads that haven't played maybe as much due to selection that aren't able to go out on loan. So for us, it's about opportunity, giving them lads a chance to come in, put their hand up for selection, for like you said, for the upcoming Prem games and European games, and also, it's a squad effort. Whenever you're involved in more than one competition, it has to be a squad effort. So it's sharing that workload and carrying the flag or the light, as you say, passing the baton, and keeping momentum going. So we've approached it that way. Like, it's opportunity. Nothing changes. It's still the Sharks first team preparing to go out against another Premiership club. So in that respect, nothing really changes too much. Just the personnel.
In terms of the injury latest, I saw big boost to see some players coming back this week from long-term injuries, guys like Josh Beaumont, Aka van der Merwe, James Harper. How close are those guys? Obviously, training doesn't necessarily mean that they're ready, especially coming off long-term injuries. How close are some of those guys to being back involved? Is this week going to be too soon? Is it going to be in the next few weeks once they've had kind of that few weeks of proper first-team training before they're considered for selection?
Yeah, I think that's the case with them. I mean, it's really excited to get them back. We're pulling them back rather than sort of letting them go, which is brilliant. They're chomping at the bit, wanting to do more and more, and especially Aka and Josh adding their sort of knowledge and expertise, just having been around for a long time. It's been brilliant to have them back in. They're looking great. Harper as well, he's ready to go. All he wants to do is scrum, so we're having to pull him back. But like you said, the worst thing we could do is just chuck them in at the deep end. So we've got to spend a bit of time, and we've got great medics here and a medical staff, so we take their lead on a lot of that. So we might see them back pretty soon, probably pushing it for this week.
In terms of some of the youngsters, Sale have always had a really great academy, and there are a lot of really fantastic young players coming through, guys that have had some good opportunities on loan, guys like Joe Carpenter, Jack Metcalf, who've been on loan at Sale FC. How excited are you about not just those two, but a number of others, and how do you kind of deal with them being on loan and them getting kind of that experience of playing? Granted, it's 2 divisions below, getting that experience there, but also seeing this game, even though it's not necessarily quite the intensity of a Premiership game, giving those guys an opportunity to have a good run in games like this?
Yeah, it's difficult for them young lads balancing the training they have to do here plus the training away at a semi-pro club, so like Sale FC, like Coldy. But it's a challenge that we embrace. We want them to have it, so they have to go from different environments, and they know that it is 2 levels down, and they're training with some of the world's best players in this environment. So they go away there, they have to perform. It's expected of them. And we've been fortunate enough that pretty much all the lads that have gone out have performed within that. The competition in terms of the levels, not too bad, because every week we're training. You've got Nia Thomas, who's with England 20s this week, but he's training against a faster clerk. You've got Jack Metcalf and Carpenter training against the lads that are going out playing for the first team every week within the the opposition team. So in terms of the levels, it's not too much. We're just happy that they've been able to go out. We've managed them really well in terms of their load, and they've performed really well, which puts us on a good starting point to bring them in for a Prem Cup team. And there's loads. Like, you've got Cal Ford, Ben Carlisle, Tumi Onasanya, Tom Curtis, who's been out, Ethan Kane, who's been out, Elliot Gawley, Nye Thomas. I mean, it's working really well for us at the minute. And they're all chomping at the bit, and we're really pleased to see how they're going to kick on.
A couple of, you mentioned Nye Thomas there playing for England under-20s the weekend just gone. A couple of weekends ago, Charlie Wardle, Tristan Woodman playing for the England under-18s against France. Is that, for those guys at under-18, is this going to come too soon, as in putting too much on them too early in their development, or could we see some of those under-18 guys that are clearly really talented players playing for England under-18s, could those guys be involved this weekend?
No, we're probably not. So it's quite a hectic schedule coming up for them lads. They've got exams coming up next month, so we've got to be mindful of that. As well as rugby, there's education, which is massively important, especially to us. You've got to get that balance right with life off the pitch, and they're still, they're not fully grown adults, fully professional rugby players yet. So bringing them in and doing that, it's probably a bit pushed too far at the minute with all the stresses that is going on with that. I mean, it's brilliant that they're involved with the international stuff, and it shows that what we're doing here, like for Gaz, Johnny, it's working. We've got some great staff, great academy staff, massive Northwest following, and it's really healthy position at the minute. It's good to see.
Just a couple of last ones from me. Alex Groves has obviously recently come from Bristol, former England under-20. Could he make his debut this weekend?
Yeah, hopefully. We're looking at that. He's been training. Obviously, we've yet to put out the team, but he's been in the mix. So, yeah, hopefully we're excited to see how he goes. So he's a big bit of meat. He can't coach big, so we like that. And he's got some skills, so we're really excited. So he probably will be in the mix.
And just one final one on the Prem Rugby Cup in general and its various kind of iterations, versions of it. Obviously, you get kind of contrasting views. Some people think it's a really good first bit of exposure for those young guys, their first experience of first team rugby, so that's kind of a really good side. Other people perhaps think maybe the players could do with less rugby, and so taking it out would perhaps include some more rest weeks. Where do you kind of sit on the Prem Rugby Cup debate in terms of, should it stay the same? Should it perhaps be slightly modified in terms of maybe having a certain number of under 23s or certain in a match day squad, or do you think it should be scrapped? Where do you kind of sit on that debate?
Yeah, well, I'm old enough and have been around long enough to have heard it called all sorts of different names. It was called, everything. So, but where do I see it sitting? I think it's massive for the club. We've got to have another competition where it allows some of the lads that don't necessarily got an opportunity to wear the Sharks shirt all the time, an opportunity to do that. More so now, as there's no Premiership Shield, or the A-League as it used to be called.
Yeah.
Like, where do the opportunity come for lads that don't get picked in your match day 23? Think about most teams have a squad of 45 players. Like, some of them can go out on loan, some of them can't. So where does that opportunity come? So I think it's massively important to have another, like a second competition within that, as well as the European Cup, of course. But I think then the onus is on the clubs to get that balance right, so you don't get player burnout. You look after player welfare. I think we've got that balance here. We do it right. We look after lads. And we want the lads that train here, part of the squad, to wear the Sharks shirt, because we want them to be 100-cap Sharks, especially if they're from the area and they've come through the academy and in their environment. Like, we get really excited about that. So yeah, I think it's definitely got a place. Like, definitely need to keep it. The more games we could play with the young lads in a Shark shirt, the better. There's probably not a format for that that's worked quite yet. I think they're looking at it since they got rid of the Prem Shield during COVID. So there's still talks around that. But our loan club system works really well. The Northwest is pretty healthy. We've got 2 clubs pushing for Championship club rugby at the minute in National 1, which would be brilliant for the club. That then gives us a better pathway to push players through. But there's definitely a place for the Prem Cup, and we're really excited. The lads are really excited. You see the training session a minute ago, the lads are buzzing. We're having to pull them back. We're like, look, we're not playing till Saturday, lads. So it's really good. It's definitely got a place.
and still defending champions, as it was.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we got to keep hold of what we got. That's part of what we spoke about this week, because it's opportunity, but also we quite like having the trophy. Let's keep it here in the cupboard.
All right, I'll pass the baton on to Paul. Cheers now.
Cheers, buddy.
Hi Neil, you alright?
Hey, buddy. You all right?
Good. Yeah, just a quick thing on the Premier Cup. I mean, one of the suggestions from the RFU was that Championship clubs could take part in it, so you sort of widen it from the Premiership. Now, I mean, you could end up playing against Sale FC, I suppose. But I mean, would that be would that be acceptable? Do you think, to Premiership sides?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably not one for me to comment too much on. I would do, because part of my job is as senior academy is making sure that lads get enough game time at the right level. There definitely needs to be a look at the pathway to get our lads playing more meaningful rugby and meaningful game time. That is as close to as the first team level or the Premiership that we'd get here, so that if and when they're needed, they're able to slot in without too much stepping or diversity within the levels. But I don't know what that is. They've been looking at that for years, haven't they? I don't know whether Championship playing against Premiership A sides will work. I'm not, it's probably out of my pay grade, that, mate.
I'm only thinking because at the moment the Premiership Cup, there have been examples this season where one Premiership team will go into it relatively strong,
yeah,
and another will have a purely development team, and you get a big blowout. Whereas if you certainly started Championship, Premiership, it would be more level, and you could put more emphasis on development.
Yeah, no, you could do, and I get that. I get that there can be sometimes a disparity between the two teams, because maybe one team will have had a bye week a week before, or they're not in a European competition, so they need to get opportunity for their lads to play, and that does come. We've had it before, previous, and we've probably put out a first team against other people's development side. So there's a place in it. The answer, I don't know whether it would work. I don't know how open the Championship teams would be towards that. I don't know how it would work in terms of a demographic. Would some teams miss out in that? I don't know how that would work personally. Like, it's definitely something needs to be looked at. I know they've spoken about a fully fledged Prem Shield fixed season. Again, do clubs have resources on that now? The salary cap's going down and squads are getting smaller. Yeah.
I think that. But as you say, I mean, it's just they are talking about it in the coming months. Going to make a decision in June. So they'll look at everything up. I mean, there's one other thing I wanted to ask you on. I'm putting a piece together for the weekend on the try scoring records in the Premiership this season, and you may be surprised to know that 5 of the top 14 try scorers this season are hookers, your former position.
Oh, yeah.
And 10 clubs have their leading try scorers a hooker. Which is, if you looking back over past seasons, it's something that hasn't quite happened before. I mean, is it just one of those things, or is there? Because I mean, at the start of the season, everyone was saying there'd be fewer driving maul tries or tries closer to the line, because if you don't ground it, the other team gets a drop up. But it seems to be more than ever.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. Luckily, well, it's a shame I wasn't in one of them teams. There we are. I've had more tries. I think I've only had 5 or 6. That was it. Yeah, no, there's been a definite trend in. I mean, you look at some teams, Tigers, Gloucester, using their maul as a weapon, and it is a weapon. I think Nick Dolly's up there on that list, isn't he, for one of them? He's been ending up on the back of a few.
Creevy's got 11, Wollstonecroft and South's got 10, but Wigan, Newcastle 9, and then Dolly and Montoya, they've both got 7.
Yeah, it was brilliant. It just shows you there's a definite place like for that drive maul, and if you can get it working and get it firing, like, and you got the right man at that. You look at Neil back in the day playing for Tigers. He was up there with the top try scorer because he used to end up at the back of the maul. Yeah, no, it's a definite place. The more hookers that score, the better. That's brilliant.
I mean, no hookers ever topped the try scoring list before, or come close. It just seemed and in Test rugby last year, not so much the Six Nations hookers were scoring bundles of tries, but in Premiership this season, more than 100 tries scored by hookers, which is almost one a game.
Yeah, well, it's an effective way, isn't it? If you get field position, you get a penalty, you can kick to the corner, you can drive, you get another penalty, you kick again. You know, as long as it works well and it's efficient, it's a hard thing to stop. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, not all the hooker tries obviously are sort of close range. I mean, we see with Wigan.
For the tap and go. Yeah, the tap
and goes, and also a bit different broken play. I mean, I know he's been injured, but Van der Merwe for you, he's got a number of good tries over the years, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's brilliant. Well, you find a lot of things like hookers. They're the only reason they're hookers because they're too small to be anywhere else. So they might be fast, or they've normally started somewhere else and they've gone, well, you're a little bit fat, you're not quite tall enough, you can't play in the back row, your hands aren't good enough to be in the centre. So we'll just chuck you in there. Learn to throw and stick your head in where it hurts. And that's normally what happens. They're failed at other positions. So they bundle you into hookers, which is why there's loads of them. And then people are surprised that they're pretty good sometimes. So, I mean, I'm sure I think Akers played at 8 before, but he's a midget, so he's had to go in there. Really powerful. I know that Nick Dolly, he's been in around this environment. He played in the backs. He's the only hooker I've ever seen do a crossfield kick. And they scored from it, actually playing for Sale FC. But he was a failed back, so they just chucked him in, I think. And there's loads of lads that are in the back row that just didn't quite grow at school. So they just chucked them in the mix. Myself, the same. I went to my first trial. I was playing the back row at school. And my teacher took me to my first trial for South Yorkshire years and years and years ago. And he says, I've put you in at hooker. I said, what? I've never played there before. He says, yeah, but you're too small. So I was like, what do I do? He said, just throw it in and keep running. And that was it. And I just carried on from there. So.
I mean, it shows that there's high skill level in a lot of these players, isn't it? I mean, much someone like McGuigan and Newcastle, I mean, he could pass for a centre. Yeah,
no, he could, and that's like I say, like he probably has played there, and then in roundabout way he's found himself pushed in just in terms of body mechanics, the way he is, and you know, they've gone, right, you're not quite big enough to be a back row, you're not quite quick enough to play in the centre, but you got all the skills. Like, where else could you be? And you know, an hooker is. And the only thing is after that is learn to push and learn to throw, which is a closed skill, throwing. So it's easy to learn. It's like pull-ups. The more you do it, the better you get.
Because it wasn't that long ago where, especially internationally, the teams seem to have these massive hookers, so as wide as they were tall.
Yeah. Well, you still get that in South Africa. You still get that. So if you go in the French leagues, you still get that. I suppose the Argentinians are still quite big. I suppose everywhere else you get. It's changing. I think they go through stages. You have that scrummaging style hooker who can be like a third prop, or you have the sort of more mobile who's able to get around, and then you get the freaks who can do both, which I was jealous of.
Yeah. You had someone like Charles Briggs, I suppose, and he was, Saracens, and he was almost like an ancillary back row forward. Tracker now at Bristol.
Yeah.
Pretty much the same. But as you say, really skillful. I suppose it compensates for having to pack down in the middle of a scrum.
Oh, I suppose, yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. Nobody wants to do that.
No. Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Neil.
No, you're welcome, mate.
Can I come in with one more, Neil?
Yeah.
Couple of injuries from last weekend. One on Sale duty, one on England duty. AJ McGinty went off knee injury, I think it looked like, against Gloucester. What's kind of the diagnosis of that? And then Tom Curry went off for England early on against Ireland, didn't look great on crutches after the game. What do you know what the latest is with those two in terms of what the severity of those injuries are?
No, it's going to sound very... What do they say when the politicians, what do they do? Very PC. Yeah, I'm not flat batting it. I would honestly say that I don't know, because I've had my head doing all the other stuff with the Prem Cup and everything. So I actually don't know about that. But now you've asked, I'll probably go and find out. So if you ask me the same thing tomorrow, I'll be able to tell you.
That's all right. No worries, Neil.
Sorry, but have that.
That was a straight bat. That was not bad.
That was good. Should learn that, isn't it?
I think that's all. I suppose just one final one from me, Neil. We spoke about the younger players coming in. How do you, and I suppose Alex Sanderson, the other coaching staff as well, how do you kind of approach the mental side of it for these young guys? Because they're coming in, they've obviously got aspirations, they've got dreams of where they want to get to. How do you kind of temper that expectation of not, I mean, obviously you have sort of generational type of talents, guys like Rafi Quirk, who you know very quickly they're going to be special players and they're going to make it very, very quickly. But even with those guys, how do you temper that, not allowing them to get carried away? Or is that kind of something you also put responsibility on the players themselves to say, you've got to have the mindset of not thinking you've done it, you've achieved it, you've got where you want to immediately? Is that kind of a thing you do both as the club, and it's the players' responsibility as well to have that mindset of, I've got to keep working, never think I've got to where I want to, always striving to get better?
Yeah, so that's an ongoing thing we do. All the lads here, all the lads want to play for the Sharks. Everyone wants to play for the Sharks. In terms of keeping them grounded and not thinking they're bigger than they are, like, we just bring it back to process. So every lad here have their own sort of PDR program, and within that there's goals which are set personally for them, and things that are discussed with the coach on what they're good at, what they need to get better, and they each have their own sort of main efforts, you could call them, and focuses. So actually they don't think about, have I made it? They just go back to process, and it's about next, like just breaking it down into sort of little bits which are easier for them to digest and manage and focus on them. And that in turn gets performance, and that in turn gets them another go at the shirt. And then they end up being a 50 capper. Before you know it, they don't realise that they've made it. And we're Northern, we're pretty down to earth anyway. If you do think if your head does get a bit big, it's soon popped, especially in this environment. So no, we luckily, like, we don't really have too many egos or people thinking they're better than they are.
Yeah, good. All right, cheers, Neil.
Top man. Are we done, lads?